right-hand side yet again. Yes, he's trying to pressure out the solo lane. We saw him doing it in game 1 and a little bit in game 2. His goal is to kind of just pressure out Snowflake. Terra!
Oh my god! Oh my god! Brian Codex out here soloing Alfredo, the support, taking down the ADC. That's gotta be a clip that we throw somewhere, man. That was absolutely bonkers. Alfredo not feel the global ult, but she's here despite that. And we might see Apollo able to come as well. He does the final basic as Kairos tries to finish it off with the dash, but Fuzzy Clay did this, but regardless, it will be a Primal Fury going the way of Fuzzy and the Wuzzies, and now over 10,000 gold up before 20 minutes into the game, and it wants to be even more, and Orden trying to chase.
Good evening, Smite fans. I am your hostess with the mostest, Nevaeh03, joined today with King Batu and a very special guest, Creamy Colonel. How are y'all doing this evening?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you very much. This is our Kennesaw State versus Ithaca Collegiate set for Albion Giants Collegiate Division. I don't really know too much about this team. We were talking a little bit about it right before the start here about how Kennesaw State pretty much won the whole thing last split, but now there's a bit of a roster change or two.
Yeah, something was a little bit different just with Collegiate. They got that window of being in college in there, so I know some roster changes happened. Then totally different team, but definitely should be exciting to watch both these teams play.
Yeah, for sure.
And Creamy Colonel, I know that you are actually part of the Collegiate League as well. Do you see any kind of meta forming in the Collegiate division that we might want to be on the lookout for during the picks and bans this evening?
RDO. Just RDO.
That RDO damage.
Yeah, it's literally just RDO. RDO and health.
Vamp Shroud that she can get the blood soaked upgrade late game, the percentage HP and mana she gains back, plus the heal on her 1 and her 3 in the Druid 4 just makes it so difficult to deal with. She has enough CC to make it just so much there, and she's just so hard to kill. So I'm right there with Creamy calling on. I want to see if this RDO gets picked, and if it does, how the teams play around it, because she doesn't have an ult. She's got that stance switcher, so that is her big drawback, because she doesn't really have any big abilities to use there, but just lots of buttons. So hopefully we'll see either it get banned as it should be, or some good prioritization to follow up around.
For sure.
Well, let's go ahead and head on into picks and bans and see what is in store for us on that note. Now we're just talking about this RDO. I'm expecting it to be first banned at this point. Like, I don't know what else to expect here. And there it is, the RDO first banned on the side of Ithaca. Are we shocked? I don't think we are.
No, not at all. Everyone's picking it in scrims.
And when you have that first pick, you can really kind of ban away those stuff you just don't want to play rather than the top meta stuff. So you'll let the other team ban the Morgans, the Tiamats, the Odins, that sort of stuff. While you can kind of, we don't want to play against Artemis, we don't want to get against RDO or play it. Might not be bad picks necessarily, but just if it's stuff you don't want to play, you can kind of pick and choose where those bans go.
Kennesaw State does see the first ban going on the side of Odin here, and then Ithaca has also said, nope, we don't want to be facing up against this Artemis, and Hell is banned on the side of Kennesaw State. Are any of these shocking to you?
No, these are all pretty standard. The Artemis, I feel like, is fallen out of the meta, but some people are still kind of scared to play against her, so makes sense.
Nothing super crazy. I'm right there with you. I think the Artemis doesn't necessarily need to be banned, as we've seen a lot of Izanami in there. Rama has been a particular one that we've seen a lot of. And but I don't, like I said, first pick, I don't super hate it, especially with this Umoja as well. That kind of tells me that they either really have faced some good Umojas or Kennesaw State has a good Umoja. So hopefully we'll be able to see that later in the set. But Tiamat rounded out. Ithaca, kind of surprised they're going to go to this Morgan Le Fay. I personally am not a huge fan of her with the changes, which it was just a hover there. Looks like they're going to go to the Gilgamesh. I like that a lot better.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of Gilgamesh, very, very prominent in the jungle role. Is that where you're seeing it in the Collegiate League as well?
Yeah, mainly, yeah. Not as much, not as often anymore, but definitely still prominent.
It's seen some of those nerfs, but that Winds of Samash and just putting in the jungle, allowing him build 1 or 2 damage items, and then just kind of go that full hybrid tank, gives you so much space control. I'm not so sure if I want to first pick it over an Osiris, especially with that
Yeah.
Osiris now has a Rama to kind of follow up on that dive. Um, both are really good solo laners, so it's kind of your choice. But personally, I kind of lean towards the Osiris.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we did talk about not being as worried about the Artemis, but being more concerned about the Rama, which, as you mentioned, was picked up by Kennesaw State, and Ithaca decides to choose the Cerberus.
Yeah, it serves a really nice flex pick right now, so I like this draft. I like the draft for both teams. I think Kennesaw might have an edge here with the Kepri because they pick their support after picking a flex like Serb, but it's whatever.
Probably means that this Gilgamesh is for sure going in the jungle, Cerberus
Mhm.
solo, and of course that Kepri in the support role, the one without the flex potential, and kind of right there with you. Kennesaw State now sees what support they're playing into, hovers this Raijin. Probably, I think, the best mage you're going to see consistently not getting picked or banned overall. As we saw the Morgan Le Fay still on the board, getting ignored, as well as Persephone. Kind of surprised we haven't seen more of her. I think she's really strong with her damage numbers, but that Raijin ult where you have able to have that taunt, that fear gives you not only some self peel, but some good team fight control. And right now in a comp that doesn't really have a whole lot of CC.
Well,
Mhm.
going to mention, Kennesaw State does have a lot of single target damage. What are we looking to see come out in the second round of picks as the Izanami is banned on the side of Kennesaw State?
I want to see some setup.
Same.
Yeah, setup which Ithaca kind of see that banning away that Sobek. I'm right there with you. Either throw this Osiris in the jungle to allow him to just kind of run, let this Rama and Raijin do that backline damage, or that Rama all following up is just makes a 1v1 fight so much more difficult. Um, but just some sort of probably double guarding is what kind of the meta is up until probably tomorrow when we get some of those jungle changes that'll kind of push the Guardians out there a little bit. But yeah, your Sobeks, your Ymirs, your Terras, even something that's going to be able to bring some damage, live a long time, and just bring so much setup.
Yeah.
Kennesaw State does see the ban on the Persephone. We did mention that the Persephone was still on the board, but no longer, and Ithaca replies with their final ban of Terra, here being hovered on the side of Kennesaw State.
This is such an aggressive comp from Kennesaw.
Enough Peel is nowhere in this comp. Fafnir's leaping in and ulting. Osiris is leaping in. Rama's going to be ulting from the backline. Even Raijin wants to leap in. I do like that they leave their jungle pick last to allow them to kind of make sure that they can either 100% go in with this follow up, or if they need to grab a little bit more of a team fight god, maybe like a Hunbats, put this Osiris into the solo lane because they still do have that flex potential, or if they can kind of go more dive heavy in the solo lane. But Ithaca double down on some late game with that Scylla, which I love with this Kepri Serb setup, and then on her to give them a little bit of early aggression and try to, excuse me, survive this early pressure that Kennesaw State is pretty much all around have on the board.
Mhm. I agree.
As
Good call.
Cullen
So it
is
is a no
being
side jungle.
hovered on the side of Kennesaw State. Is this something we were looking for on the side of Kennesaw State?
It's just dive, 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 man. They were like, oh, we're aggressive. Let's just double down on this.
Yeah. Cullen also going to be diving in there, blink, salmon leap, and then turn that transformation, just keep running down this fight. I personally, I think with the comp specifically, would have loved to seen Achilles. I think Achilles does really well into the silhouette, that double dash, makes it really hard to hit that root that she likes to use for that peel, as well as the on her pillar. That's that you really only self pill when you have that double dodge. It makes it so much harder for you to get targeted. As well as that execute into this Kepri, where when you have this kind of a dive comp, if they're gonna late game try to dive onto one target and that Kepri ult reses and they drop 2-3 ults, it's really going to set Ithaca up for a good counter engage and win some of these team fights.
Creamy, what do you feel like is going to be the winning team comp based on the collegiate meta that you've been seeing?
Just the meta, I'm leaning towards Kennesaw here because right now, if you can get ahead, you stay ahead. Especially with a late game comp like Ithaca's. Like, if they fall behind, they are just screwed. Because like your games are ending in less than 25 minutes, you know? So
Yeah,
if
it's really
Kennesaw
going
can
to
get an early lead, they're gonna take it in a run, I hope.
I think Ithaca's really going to have to rely on this Honor and this Gilgamesh to wade through this early game. Hopefully they don't get snowballed on. Live to that 20-25 minute art where starter items go. And then at that point, it's really going to be on Kennesaw to make sure they get some good value out of their dives. If not, Scylla, Serb, on her Gilgamesh late game, it's going to be a tough task. But I think Kennesaw's got the favor here.
Mhm.
Right, well, we don't have to wait too much longer. We can send it on over to Argent Surge and Akira to bring us game number 1, Ithaca versus Kennesaw State.
Thank you, Nevea. And Batsu on the desk, along with our special friend Creamy Colonel. I'm Arjun Surge. I am joined today by my friend Akira. Akira, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to see some more collegiate games. I know we had some yesterday play out, and that was pretty exciting. So I know on the desk they were saying that they were leaning towards Kennesaw's comp here. What are you kind of thinking yourself?
I think it comes down to execution and how these teams play, how they coordinate. Now, it's a bit of a cop out, obviously, because that's always what it comes down to. But we don't have a lot of big circles on Kennesaw, right? If they're diving one person, that makes the Kepri's job pretty easy. Living Live is going to keep his dive target alive. Now, on the other hand, if we can get some disruption onto the Kepri with that Kukulin, bring that big disruption, the Fafnir synergy with the Osiris and Rama could go Kennesaw's way also. But we'll see how the early game plays out, because I definitely do agree with the desk analysis that the early game is a strong indicator for how the game is going to go.
There are a few interesting build paths that we're seeing on both sides here, with the Cerberus going the Tainted Steel and the Rom deciding to go the T1 into Devo's Gauntlet. How are you really feeling about the Cerberus going Tainted Steel into the Kukulin matchup in the solo lane?
I'm not sure about the Tainted Steel pickup. I don't necessarily see an urgent need for anti-heal, but maybe these players know something I don't. Maybe this team tends to go heavy into lifesteal or something. Other than that, the Gilgamesh seems to be going for that mannequins, maybe an indicator of a more auto attack focused build. Osiris definitely pretty standard. Interesting to see the Rama go with the T1 Dev Gauntlet first. That Dev Gauntlet has definitely fallen out of favor a little bit in that carry role, so we'll see which item that ends up being and how it works out for that player, Sped Royalty.
Yeah, there was a recent nerf on the Icavol, so that might have actually made some ADCs decide to experiment with the old builds like Transcendence and Devos. Trans, though, haven't really seen much of recently. In the mid lane, we have the Scylla versus the Raijin. Both Scylla kind of reigning supreme at the start of the season, Raijin having a steady incline at the top here. Who do you really think is going to offer the most pressure and get the most early game power spike online first?
So I do feel like the Raijin does have the edge in the early game and does bring a good amount of disruption. That's a little bit before the Scylla gets online. But the Scylla having that, basically unmatched, especially with the draft we've got here, basically unmatched secure, means that around objective fights, Kennesaw State's going to have to be careful about how they engage with it. Now, they do have the Rama, but if the Rama is up in the air sniping at the objective, that means that the Rama's probably not getting DPS onto the enemy team. So it's a balance between team fight and objective, whereas the Scylla can sort of transition directly from team fight, a crush here, a Sikkim there, and then I'm a monster onto the objective. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that kind of breakdown on that. As we see nothing really early happening so far. Both teams just kind of easing into through the early game here, farming up. It is interesting to see Gilgamesh go over and split farm with the dual lane trying to secure the purple. Maybe they're concerned about potential invade, but that opens the door for No Taste on the Raijin to get a back camp invade off. And I think that's just kind of good looking at the map, seeing where people are rotating, being willing to step forward and really push for an advantage there.
Yeah, definitely. If you have knowledge that Gilgamesh is over on the left side, why not? Take the back camp. There's a little bit of free farm, a little bit of farm stripped away, and definitely some... I actually was going to comment on the same thing. Definitely have gotten yelled at as a jungle main myself for taking for splitting that purple farm without reason. So hopefully the comms aren't getting too toxic over on that team. Oh boy.
Oh, yeah, we see a lot of pressure coming out of this Kukulin early, and kind of what we were worried about with going the Tainted Steel. It doesn't really offer too much for the Cerberus. Yeah, some protections, but a lot of Guardian solo laners have been going these vamp shadows. We see some action happening in dual lane. Osiris deciding to blink in. Kepri seems to be the target. The plug just to delay time, make sure that on her gets out. Living Live will fall. Kennesaw State will take first blood. That's a pretty cut and dry systematic gank there.
Yeah, definitely well played on the Osiris' part. The angle of engagement, one of the most important parts of a gank.
Oh.
But of course, if your jungler's one place, that means the jungler's not in another place. So the return kill coming through in mid. And I think we actually probably, I would probably favor Ithaca there. Taking the mid lane and essentially in exchange for the support is a trade that you want to take. Though, first blood gold, definitely going to Kennesaw State. So maybe it's a bit of a wash or maybe slightly in their favor.
it does give the dual lane a little bit of a lead, and Rom mostly harkened as the the second best ADC currently. Giving him a lead will never be a bad thing, even though he didn't get the kill credit, still got the assist. But getting that Scylla to have a level up immediately after Raijin ticked 5, so that'll be about a level and a half lead now in favor of the True Red Dog. I'm tending to agree with you that I think Ithaca did end up coming out on top in that trade. It might have gone back into Kennesaw's favor if the Gilgamesh had also died there with Izzy coming in low and catching him off guard, forcing the winds of Shamash out. But after a little bit of early fireworks here, actually, they're not stopping as we see Osiris now ganking on the solo side. Cerberus using his ult to buy himself some time, brings Osiris into the T1 tower, staying alive for now. Kokolin getting a little bit frisky, trying to dive the tower, but Kennesaw State will back off and end up just invading the blue buff, taking their winnings and leaving there. If you're in Mighty We Trust there, how do you feel about that gank ending with you not dying, but your blue buff getting invaded?
I mean, you lived. I mean, that's a lot of resources expended on you, and you lived through it. Unfortunate that your blue goes down, but you didn't give up the kill, so not necessarily a win per se, but good work out of the Cerberus. I will say the other thing that we're starting to see here is that Kennesaw State is just farming the map a little bit more effectively. They did get the 500 gold bounty off of the first blood, but their lead is much bigger than that. So these rotations in this farm is definitely starting to push the game a little bit more in their favor, as they have opened up a 2,000 gold lead here 6 minutes into the game.
Yeah, we were talking also about that level lead in mid lane. The Raijin has easily come up and made that even, actually gaining a little bit of a lead as he hit 7-4. The Scylla did. So that definitely goes to show that they are just kind of rotating around the map, getting ready to get these power spikes on. As we see some actions, Raijin decides to blink in on the Scylla. Barely any mana, uses the ult just to get some more damage down. I don't see much coming out here, but Gilgamesh ends up coming in the backside, blinking and wins Shamash, trapping Raijin, and there's no escape for him. He has no mana. He will fall. The Scylla coming in just shy of hitting anyone. Lord of the Afterlife coming down in on the trio of blue members trying to make their way back to the order side T1. Osiris diving the T1, actually getting the kill on Scylla with the Spirit Flail. That was a pretty long drawn-out engagement, and even more long drawn-out chase afterwards. Kennesaw State is showing they are willing to dive these towers really early, as we see Honor willing to dive them in their own jungle. Izzy in trouble. I don't see him getting out anytime soon, but the autos do not connect. He does get out with 1 HP there.
You gotta hit those. You gotta hit those. A little bit trigger happy from living live on that Khepri ult. The Scarab's Blessing coming out a little bit early and not getting much value off of it. Could have saved the Scylla's life if it had been just a little bit more discipline and a little more patience. But good heads-up play from Abstracted Mona on the Gilgamesh, coming in right after the Raijin had just expended basically everything the Raijin had, meaning he was dead to rights as soon as Gilgamesh appeared on the scene.
Definitely a really good rotation coming in that high right side jungle, coming down in on the Raijin, also acknowledging that he had no mana and also teleported in, meaning he has 0 escape from you. As we saw, actually, our cameraman Narwhal go ahead and hover the Bulwark of Hope, being the first completed item on Kokolin. There's a lot of items that some physical warriors in the solo lane have been building up against the magical guardians. Is this one you normally see so early on, or is this usually reserved for more late game?
So well, sorry, there's a fight going on, cutting into our analysis time here. But I don't think the kill potential is all bit big.
Yeah, I don't see him getting out. Both ults are used on the soul laners, though, and actually that's a really big Cerberus ult, pushing both of the Kennesaw State members under the tower. But these are the tanks. It's going to be hard to kill. Kokolin ends up getting his transformation off here real soon. He finally transformed. Gilgamesh put himself in danger now, trying to come on the backside. The damage from Kokolin's just too much. Now in Mighty We Trust, potentially a little bit of danger. Backing off there. That was a really good turnaround from Kennesaw State's front line. No damage dealers there, just the Kokolin and the Fafnir managed to turn it around and get a kill on the jungler.
Abstracted Mona, just a little bit overestimation of how much damage he can put out, but fighting mid.
Yeah, it seems like there was a rotation from the duo side, bringing their 1v1 into mid there, as Rom is also going to end up falling there. That they lose the Khepri in that, I think, 3v3. Not the normal 3v3 you see, as there was no junglers involved, but the dual lane ends up falling as well as the mid for Kennesaw State. Ithaca finding some room to step back in, as you said, where you were 9, ends up barely getting out with 1 HP. There is fighting all across the map. It was 3 minutes of peace, and since that 3-minute mark, it has been gas pedal to the floor fighting nonstop.
Now, despite that, I will say that Ithaca is doing a great job of not necessarily cutting into this lead, but devaluing it. That 2,000 gold lead hasn't really budged, but as time goes on, it gets a little bit less significant, right? 2,000 gold at 6 minutes is not the same as 2,000 golds at 9 minutes, or 2,000 golds at 10 minutes, or 2,000 golds at 20 minutes. So good on Ithaca for this sort of bloodbath style of play, keeping them in this game and mitigating their opponent's lead.
Yeah, as we saw on the graphs there, though, the gold lead still might be in favor of Kennesaw. The XP lead is essentially evened out there as we see the respective roles. There's a level lead in dual lane for Ithaca. However, a level lead in both the support role and the jungle role for Kennesaw State. So there's some evening out. It's essentially the lead that is in dual lanes also being evened up by the other two roles. As we're transitioning now, we're hitting the 10-minute mark. Team fights are going to start building up more and more. We saw the Fire Scorpion just get dropped for the side of Ithaca there. What are these objectives going to be prioritizing? Are they going to be prioritizing a fight around Pyromancer before the Gold Fury spawns in, or do you see some patience happening? As we actually see a bit of a 1v1 happening in duo side. Sorry to interrupt your own question. Can't get in the air. Sped Royalty desperately trying to get airborne to avoid the Desert Fury, however, is not able to get airborne quite yet, but now Martini in trouble as he passes aggressively directly into Raijin, but Gilgamesh is there to back him up, and Raijin's gone before he can even get all shots of his ultimate out.
Brutal, brutal. Unfortunately, because, as you said, the Gorp... Are you a gold Scorpion, Fire Scorpion person, or a Gorp Forp person?
Oh, I go Gorp Forp all the time.
You Gorp
all
Forp,
day, every day.
Unfortunately, Gorp was still up, so they did end up trading Gorp for Pyromancer, which is not necessarily a trade in their favor, but 2 kills out of that for no deaths. I mean, I think you got to give that to Ithaca. And definitely some strong play. I mean, trust there. Martini doesn't panic and run away. His jungler's there, so his jungler comes in and does his jungler's job. Good coordination, good teamwork out of Ithaca. Unfortunately, it hasn't translated into cutting this gold lead's absolute value anymore.
The Pyromancer being god by Kennesaw State does even that gold loss a little bit, but we do see the aggressive ward coverage that Ithaca has on the Gold Fury side. There 3 wards cutting into Kennesaw State's jungle, and that might have been what led to the to Martini's pathing there. They saw the Raijin going in. Gilgamesh says, "Hey, I'm around. I have ultimate. We can kill this guy if you walk up into him." It seems as really good coordination as we see Gilgamesh playing a little bit aggressive, not getting too much damage out on the Fafnir. As Osiris, in the meantime, going on the other side of the map, walking behind Cerberus. Cerberus not knowing any idea he was there. Order of the Afterlife comes out, but Stygian Torment goes and pushes both the Solar and the Jungler into the T1. He's staying alive for now, but does end up falling under the T1 tower. But Ithaca, in the meantime, gets the Gold Fury, and now a fight's potentially breaking out around the Gold Fury. Fafnir ultimating, going in. But it looks like this is going to be a really split fight as Raijin's leaving. Rom gets the snipes onto the Khepri, gets the Khepri kill. Now Fafnir is split across from the Rom, and they're just desperately trying to get back to each other, fall behind the T1 tower.
Interesting choice from Kennesaw State there. As soon as Izzy goes in on the Cerberus, on in Mighty Boy Trust over in the solo lane, that's the go button for Ithaca. That means they essentially knew that as soon as that gank started, whether or not it succeeded or failed, they were giving up the Gold Fury. Now it happened to succeed, so it mitigated the effect of losing the Gold Fury, but an interesting choice there. It's going 2 for 1, but getting the Gold Fury. Now we are starting to see this lead dissipate a little bit, so make those sort of plays. You have to check your priorities. Can't always just be going for kills and flashlights.
Yeah, we see No Taste currently with a 1 in 5 slash mark on the Raijin, but staying even in XP. And there you saw that fight. Raijin used his ultimate, got really low, and immediately was running. And that was the go button for the Ithaca members to rush forward and chase him down and kill him. They get the kill, but in the meantime, the Fafnir was diving on the Khepri in the back at very low HP. Rom ends up hitting all 3 snipes onto Living Live and makes him no longer alive. So that's a bit of a trade that potentially could have been avoided if Ithaca just turns and kills the Fafnir that's standing behind them all.
Definitely. But the Rom snipes were good, so definitely gotta hand it to Bed Royalty there. Now, I do have another question for you. Is it Living Live or Living Live? And is it No Taste or Not Ace?
I think Living Live was just a a little bit of a spice on the V's, like a living live. Living live, yeah, something like that. But no taste. Yeah, I think no taste comes out better than not ace. Yeah, it doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. But speaking of build paths though that we were talking about earlier, the ROM deciding not to complete the Devos. What do you think about this build path he's deciding to go on instead of building the bows?
Conventional wisdom says that you should finish your items, and I think conventional wisdom is right. I'm not sure. Maybe that was a misclick. Maybe he had an old build loaded or something, because he did go directly into the Ichabod afterwards, spend royalty. So I suspect that maybe the spicy Devos experiment that we were discussing at the beginning was not the intention. Nevertheless, is still getting some slight value out of it, right? It's not like it's 0 lifesteal. As it goes more into the Odibo traditional build as a fight still breaks out in mid, but again, not much kill potential it looks like.
Yeah, Scylla does step up to clear the way and puts herself in a bit of danger. Ends up getting stunned by the Fafnir, using the beads Aegis just to immune herself from the slow of Raiju. As in the meantime, Martini was trying to walk in the back of the fight and got surrounded and collapsed on it and ended up dying before a fight even really broke out. They no longer have their ADC to try to contest this. Kennesaw State's just going to push the T1 down and potentially the T2, as Gilgamesh also isn't there to really contest anymore.
Pathing and ward coverage are so important. Martini just effectively just walked into the enemy team and got jumped in the jungle. Now, as Kennesaw State looks like they're lining up for the Fire Giant, the ward coverage would suggest that Ithaca knows they're in the area. We will see if they start to commit onto this, or maybe they're just waiting for the Pyromancer. But Ithaca State is, Ithaca is stepping up.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be dancing around a little bit. Nothing crazy happening yet. It looks like they're Kennesaw State's content just to go for the Pyromancy here. It doesn't look like Ithaca's really going to be looking for a steal of any kind. Going back to the ADC builds, though, I want to go on the other side here. Martini going into the Ichabod as we normally seen, but then going and rushing into an Aussie and then Wind Demon. I know that's not an uncommon build, but still not super well seen. What are the reasons for that, do you think?
Aussie provides a lot of safety. That Aussie passive does, when you're low, it gives you a lot of lifesteal, and then you can often sustain out of whatever trouble that you're in. And as for the Wind Demon, I've been seeing this a little bit in the SPL, where players will just splash one crit item, usually Wind Demon, just because of the Wind Demon passive, right? Wind Demon has a reasonable amount of crit chance as we see a fight start out here.
Yeah, it looks like Onher's getting a little bit aggressive. Martini pushing for the kill. Sped Royalty managing to get up in the air while Abstract Mona came in behind and dropped the Winston Shamash. I don't see him getting out of here, but he does end up getting the backflip off. There's no chase potential there, and the rest of Kennesaw State's here looking for a re-engage. Now, Gilgamesh going for the gank is now getting ganked, is running down the lane, desperately trying to get out. The rest of Ithaca's not going to be able to rotate in time. Gilgamesh will fall, and now the chase is on. Will Martini be able to get out? Spirit Flail just short, keeping Osiris from getting that speed boost. And now it looks like the Oni Fury is going to be the next thing up on the chopping block for Kennesaw State.
Now, Ithaca does have a larger number of ults left. Only the Fafnir ult remains on the right side, and it's about to go down. But I don't know if they're in position to be able to steal this, but the Ithaca players in general just need to hit these abilities a little bit more. The thin margins they're playing on mean that, a couple of misses here and there can really turn the tide of the game.
Yeah, and after getting that Oni Fury, decided to play a little bit aggressive. Martini playing very aggressive, playing with his life and not getting what he was hoping for. There was a time there where Izzy on the Osiris was just straight up walking at the Onher, tanking all the autos, not caring, and getting him very low. So this level lead that Osiris currently has, a 3-4 level lead against the enemy jungler, just against the enemy team, this Osiris is going to be very hard to kill. He's going to be very dangerous now that he has the Spectral Armor online.
Kennesaw State has definitely blown this game wide open. They are in a commanding position. I wouldn't say this is one of those 99%ers yet, but they definitely would have to make a couple of mistakes to even this game up. As I was saying about the build, the other thing about it is that if you only go one crit item, you may get someone going into Spectral, for example. That Spectral on that Osiris could have been another item, but it's Spectral instead. And you're only investing one crit item to get that kind of reaction. So that's another powerful effect of just splashing one Wind Demon, along with the passive, meaning that you get more attack speed, which is always good for ADCs, and more movement speed, always good for ADCs, and everyone really, when that crit does happen to go off.
Yeah, one thing I've been noticing ADCs doing, and as a fellow jungle man, I'm not too fond of this, is they go into the crit, bait out the Spectral right around your, your physical item slot that you want to be getting online. Otherwise, you're going to start getting hit really hard. And they've been baiting out some Spectrals from people, and then just sell their T2 or completed crit item, go to immediately into something else. And that doesn't really sit that well with me. I feel like that's both a fool's errand in gold, but also just really disrespectful to the junglers who are just trying to live their lives.
Well, especially when, well, we're about to have our revenge. Just give it about 24 hours. Don't you worry. We'll be jumping on those ADCs real soon.
Yeah, finally, assassins are going to be, they're going to be dangerous again. We're going to finally put some fear in the back line.
Well, the other thing about it is that if you do exercise that patience, because it is a bit of a mind game, if you do exercise that patience as a jungler, you can get them to complete the item all the way. And if they complete the item all the way, and then you complete Spectral Armor, I don't think there's a crit item that's as cheap as Spectral Armor. So I think it does still work out in your favor. It's just, as you said, annoying.
Yeah, we see that damage already coming out from the Raijin. 20 minutes in now. Just using his 1 and 2 gets the on her to half health. So far, no taste. Now I'm saying no taste. Nodus hasn't really had a lot of freedom of movement in these fights. Usually been the guy kind of getting dove on. But as we see his fight starting to break out around Fire Giant here, Colin spearheading the attack. Now they're chasing them all the way down to their speed buff. Still uses the ult for the immunity and tries to get some damage off. Goes a little bit shy. Osiris managed to get the kill. Cerberus, though, getting the return kill. Now they're being chased underneath their right Phoenix. Honor is going to fall as Colin dives said Phoenix. Now Cerberus might be up next as all of Kennesaw State's just pressing the gas pedal. That wasn't really even a fight over an objective. That was just a fight to see how it happened there. And Kennesaw State came up way far ahead compared to Ithaca.
Eliminating both the damage dealers mean that they do have a window here, especially since they have both carries still up to take Fire Giant, and that's where they are going. They played that fight pretty well. Ithaca was pretty split up relative to... Uh-oh. Please don't. Okay. They were pretty split up relative to Kennesaw. The other thing that Kennesaw did well was applying their strength to Ithaca's weakness, but unfortunately, I'm sorry, Living Live, we're not getting enough value out of these Scarab's blessings, especially if they're accidentally being placed onto the Khepri instead of one of the carries.
Yeah, that ultimate came in just a little bit too late to save True Red Dog there. Ended up falling before the Scarab's blessing gets placed. Speaking of Scared's blessings being needed, and Mighty We Trust getting walked down by the front line yet again. This is the second time he's seen it happen, but this time he has teammates around him. Kukulkan having to use his untransformed ultimate just to be able to safely walk out there. We saw Kennesaw pick up the Fire Giant there, but we didn't. Evan wasn't there to tank it. Nades takes a lot of his health and has to end up back in there. They just can't do the Fire Giant there. What does that really show you in these fights? What do you have to do if you're Kennesaw State to successfully win a fight enough to get the Fire Giant?
The biggest thing for any Smite player transitioning from casual/ranked play into team play, competitive play, is comps. And that just looks to me like a bit of a lack of coordination. Oh boy.
Sped Royalty almost getting caught there. Souls, the Pyromancer, almost loses his life for it as Sure Red Dog and Living Live end up coming around the corner. And Zilla, the only level 16, a 4-level difference in the mid lane. She's hitting hard. It's 22 minutes in. She has some items online. She's getting back to her Scylla mainstay power here as we see Martini actually getting engaged on the mid lane. Steps a bit too far up with no help around him. This ends up being the Raijin and Taiko drums to really confirm the chase for the Osiris. Osiris getting the kill credit there. You just lost your ADC before a team fight even started here. If you're Ithaca, do you just give up this Fire Giant? Do you try to contest?
I mean, you have Scylla, I'm a monster's up. You have a shot. But now we see Kennesaw State much better this time. Last time they took a win in the jungle and then they backed off, got nothing off of it. And I would say Ithaca basically got a free reprieve there because they didn't end up taking it. Will this work?
I'm also just a little bit too late. Ends up paying for her transgressions of even trying to steal for that Fire Giant away. That was a bit nerve-wracking as half of Kennesaw State decided to drop the Fire Giant to try to keep out the Scylla they saw coming on the backside. But now Ithaca decided to greed for that Scorpion on the right side there is no longer in a position to defend this T2, and it will fall. Depending on how fast Khepri and Gilgamesh gets to the right Phoenix, that might also fall before they can put up defense there.
I mean, this might just be the game here. Kennesaw State, in addition to having Fire Giant on all 5, has a huge gold lead and experience lead. As we do move into this Phoenix defense, or former Phoenix defense.
Yeah, Phoenix does fall very fast, and so do two members of Ithaca. Martini barely getting out with his life. He just respawned and got brought back down to about an eighth of his health. Has to use the Aegis just to get back to base safely. That just is showing that Kennesaw is that far ahead. They have complete control over this game and how it's going to be played. If you're Ithaca, do you really just kind of hope for a good base defense here and try to delay? Or are you in comms just talking about what do we do next game to try to slow down this comp that they had this game?
At this point, it is, I would say, pretty much one of those 99 percenters, though. There's always a chance, right? You have a Scylla, a Crush goes one way, a Monster goes another, and then, you win a team fight even against a strong team. But yeah, I think you do start focusing, you have to keep the mental strong for game 2. The one thing I will call out that's a little bit interesting that we see out of in Mighty We Trust on the Cerberus is not only the Tainted Steel, but followed up with a Contagion late in the build. And I'm not 100% sure what that's in response to.
Do you think maybe he's just so afraid? He's been so scarred by all the RDOs and casuals and ranked matches that he just instinctively builds anti-heal now?
It could very well be. Anti-heal, it's not like... The thing about anti-heal is that it's not like it doesn't have value. There is a med cloak on Kennesaw State. Is that enough to warrant, doubling down into anti-heal like this? Not sure. But anti-heal does always kind of have value in pretty much all situations, just because there is passive healing, there are lifesteal items. So even if you don't have a Hell or an Aphrodite or something on their team, there is value out of it. I just sort of question that much of it.
As we see, actually, Kennesaw State now completing the T2 on the other side, the left side of the map here. They have enough time for their Fire Giant buff to push for Phoenix here. So this is going to be potentially the last Phoenix defense of the game if it goes the way of Kennesaw State. If you're Ithaca, you're just desperately hoping that True Red Dog can get a good crush in. As we see that initiation start with a Cocoon Blinken ult, gets a 4-man knockup. Desert Fury trying to tear through him. His health bar is about the same amount as the on her. As we see, still ends up falling in the background with Osiris diving. Raijin also going in. Scarab's Blessing missing the mark now on to the Scarab himself. Does get the res off while his teammates end up getting a trade for the Cocoon, but he might be the last to fall, but that is going to be it for the game. Kennesaw State tears through game 1. 20-10 are the kills. If you're Ithaca here, this is really just kind of, you have to keep this mental out, but like keep the mental wash out here and just look into game 2, because that was, tear by Kennesaw State.
There were signs of life, though. Martini on the On Her did have a lead a lot of the time and was doing good damage. You just need to sort of get more value out of those frontline picks in the Cerberus and the Khepri.
I definitely agree, and especially that Khepri we saw is somewhat struggling to make any impact in team fights, whether it be on the CC side or the peeling side or using the Scare's Blessing to great effect for his backliners. But that's not for us to decide. That's going to be going to the desk to break down game number 1 here of Ithaca versus Kennesaw State.
Thank you, Argent and Akira. That was one heck of a game number 1. Joined here with me, I'm Nevaeh, by the way, is Batu and a special guest, Creamy Colonel. What were your thoughts on that game? Did it go the way you were expecting it, or?
It went the way that we expected. It wasn't as clean as I would have hoped from either team, but Kennesaw won with the better draft. But
Yeah,
was
not
it
any pressure out of this Gilgamesh early game. I believe you got about 8,000 damage, where everybody except the Fafnir had upwards of 15k on the side for Kennesaw. And soon as it got late game, Honor can only do so much, especially when a Kakulin is in his face with Bumbas, just auto canceling to sustain a lot of that damage back up. So yeah, snowballed from the beginning. We got to that late game and just too much pressure out of the right side of the map.
And I think that's what you were saying right at the end of Picks and Bans phase, is that the team comp for Kennesaw State seemed to be a little bit more of that aggressive team comp, whereas Ithaca was a little bit more late game, probably a little bit more late game than they expected or needed.
Yeah, for sure. The dive eventually kind of clicked for them, because Lord knows at the beginning it wasn't too clean from them. They would get one kill or maybe even none and trade out of life, but then they just stopped trading and just got it one-sided.
Yeah, going in very deep, another at that speed buff, and then the carry and ADC were like, let's do fire, and nobody else was around, and almost costing both of their lives, and pretty much kind of throwing aside that whole engage lead that they had of those death timers to where they had to go again, but getting so many relics, they were able to just re-get the on her again, get his ult, force him out, nothing in return that they had to really lose outside of like Raijin ult. Then that was just there. But good job again from Kennesaw State. I do think that kind of draft could definitely work. But something that I want to touch on is I didn't see like any impactful ults outside of some Rama ganks with that Gilgamesh ult. But outside of that, no Scylla ults, Khepri ults, Gilgamesh ults, even most of the Serb ults. There was just no real impact from any of the players there from Ithaca that really changed any of these team fights.
Yeah, they seemed a little trigger happy on the ults. I mean, I'm one to talk. I'm one to just kind of throw up my Giannis ults from mid lane, but like when you're a Gilgamesh, you can't just like, or a Kepi for that matter, you can't just like ult at the start of a team fight. But hey, stuff happens. Let's see what happens in game 2 from them, right? Let's hope they don't do that trigger happiness.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a short break before we get into game number 2. So we will see you on the other side of this break.
Right-hand side yet again. Yes, he's trying to pressure out the solo lane. We've saw him doing in game 1 and a little bit in game 2. His goal is to kind of just pressure out Snowflake. Terra!
Oh my god! Oh my god! Brian Codex out here soloing Alfredo, the support, taking down the ADC. That's gotta be a clip that we throw somewhere, man. That was absolutely bonkers. Alfredo not feel the global ult, but she's here despite that. And we might see Apollo able to come as well. He does the final basic as Kairos tries to finish it off with the dash, but Fuzzy Clay did this, but regardless, it will be a Primal Fury going the way of Fuzzy and the Wuzzies, and now over 10,000 gold up before 20 minutes into the game, and it wants to be even more. Orden trying to chase out Kairos, and it will be some peel, but
Fuzzy
joining in on the ultimate, gonna force out the ultimate from Kairos as well, and he might just get away, but it forces dash into a rough spot. Raijin dashes as well, trying to get damage from the Taiko drums, who gets taken out before he can get more than one shot off, but Alfredo finding himself a double kill, looking for the triple. Fafnir low, triple kill coming out from Alfredo. He's going to look for the Quadra, getting low here, trying to find it onto the Artemis, but Double Mumble doing a great job of zoning him out and gets the dash to finish off the kill. Soul still alive, wants to put more damage into this Sobek, and he might be able to finish it off, and he does. 4 members fall from Going Ghost, only 3 members on the side of Fuzzy and the Wuzzies, and I gotta say, it
That's all of their ults? Yeah.
Oh,
Huge! Oh my god!
huge.
Yes,
Oh,
let's
bro.
go! My goodness.
Room. Do you knock up?
I have it in 1.
Nah. Damn. If we were all right, we could do gold. But I just killed Matt too.
Kill the Bacchus.
Bacchus, easier kill.
Coming over. Nice job.
He jumped.
Yeah,
Nope.
he jumped around.
And welcome back to game number 2, Kennesaw State versus Ithaca. I am Navio3, joined with Batu and a special guest, Creamy Colonel. With what we had seen in the last game, what are we going to prioritize on the ban phase here? What do you guys think?
I think we ban Osai. Still banning the Yardio. I was gonna say let the Artemis through, but looks like we're still afraid of that one.
Kennesaw State says, no, thank you. No Artemis, please.
Yeah. Switch up with the bans. Interesting to see Ithaca lose game 1. They opt to go for that second pick. So clearly they want to try a 2-for-1 grab. Understandable. They're going to ban the RDO. They don't want to play that. But I'm right with Creamy Colonel. I think we need to see an Osiris ban this game. But with the Artemis banned as well, that means either Odin, Tiamat, Hell, one of those is going to be getting through. With the Hell, you've got 3 ban spots left. And if the Osiris gets banned, you're going to have Gilgamesh will probably see again. Tiamat that might make it through. Like, there's so many spots that we're going to see. So I'm interesting to see what Ithaca get for this hopefully 2-for-1 trade of taking the second.
And seeing Hell banned on the side of Kennesaw State and the Odin ban on the side of Ithaca. And we are looking at, there's the Gilgamesh ban on the side of Kennesaw State. And
Osiris
Tiamat.
not banned. I'm on Kennesaw State. I'm just insta-locking this Osiris again here.
For sure,
I don't know
for
if your
sure.
solo can play it, but solo played well, your jungle played well. Give one of them this Osiris, let them run it down again. There's really nothing outside of that. Like, the Morgan Le Fay wasn't picked or banned the first game. Persephone wasn't banned until the second phase. And they insta-locked the Fafnir. Again, I'm still on this Osiris. Someone needs to grab this, because that was, I think, the most impactful pick from game 1.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I was
They
gonna
really
make a
like
joke.
the Fafnir, though.
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke if they picked Osai that just lock the Baron, because that seems like they want to do that, but no. There's some Ram and Osai. Okay, I like these picks from Ithaca.
And the Rama wasn't terrible. So clearly they got that taken away, and the Osiris here. Good solid picks. Rama, he has his bad matchups. He has his good ones. Really no reason to wait on the draft to pick him. Osiris, we've already extended Hensley on. I want to see Kennesaw here lock in a mid lane again. Persephone is open if they can play that. I think that's probably the strongest mid laner. You had a good Raijin game. Posh Hubbard, if this gets locked in, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Posh
Well,
and
Kennesaw.
Cupid both being hovered
Okay.
up, but they lock in
Okay.
the Nemesis.
We do a slight bit of trolling, no worries.
I don't
It's
mind the
just a
troll
meme.
there. But I like this Nemesis pick in particular. I haven't seen a whole lot of her just with a little more of the hybrid junglers. Nem build can get a little bit weird, even going hybrid just because you want to try to get those specific power spikes when you can. But I think into this Osiris, and now this Yamoja locked in, I think this is a really strong pick. But I said it early in game 1, this Yamoja banned away, he's now made it through. I'm excited to see hopefully some good Yamoja plays.
And on the side of Kennesaw, we're still missing a mid laner. What kind of mid laner do we hope to see come out of Kennesaw State as we're going into the second phase of bans? Kakulin being banned on the side of Ithaca.
I was gonna say the Raijin, yeah.
I was going to say, I think we were both thinking the Raijin, but Kennesaw State banned that away. They don't have the first pick, so I kind of get them banning because Ithaca could take it away with this next pick after the ban phase. clearly they have in mind who they want to pick in the mid lane, but I definitely want to see something with mobility to get away from this Emoji and Osiris. They got a lot of slows, and outside of that Osiris ult, they really don't have a lot of chase down with elite properly placed. So whether they take, okay, they don't take the Scylla. I don't know where they're going with this mid pick here. Those are my two top picks that I was thinking of. Persephone is still open as the Cerberus get bans, but I'm not sure where they're looking for.
I'm thinking either Purse or Baba here, man. Baba into Osa is really fun, but there's the Morgana.
Does it get locked in this time? It does.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to see the Morgan Le Fay. She does have some decent self peel. Nem and Cupid, no CC immunity in their kits. Fafnir does have the untargetability in his ult, but transforming out of it and into it does give you some decent setup. But I like this Morgan Le Fay pick. That mobility, that good self peel, decent into this Nemesis. Able to just ult the Cupid ult if need be. Is that lifesteal that she can do really well into. Another mid lane mage, though, that does it a little bit better, I think, though, is Soul.
Yeah, I agree. I do really like Morgana into Nemesis because you just knock up and she has no shield, but Soul is Soul's a really fun one into Morgana, so I guess it was a bait pick.
King Arthur being hovered on the side of Kennesaw State, locked in. What are your thoughts on this King Arthur pick?
It's again, Kennesaw State, they kind of go for this late game comp. Cupid, Soul, and even Nemesis all have some really good Fafnir benefit off that to where if 2 out of the 3 of those are dead, if one of those are up and it's a DSI, you probably should be able to do an objective. Fafnir and King Arthur, both great tanks. Any of those other 3 should have enough DPS to get a fire giant late, but I don't know about this early game because, like, Soul, she's got decent clear, not the best as far as fights go. Same with Cupid, Nem, Fafnir. King Arthur has, with item changes, losing boots, Bluestone not really being prominent enough in the solo lane. Although on the other side, outside Ithaca, they really only have this Osiris, so they're kind of playing that mid to late game as well.
They
These
lock
two
in that
solo
Guan Yu.
laners. Haven't seen these two solo laners in months. It's a throwback. I'm excited though.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see another Guardian over there. Guan Yu also has that, I think probably is a little bit of pressure now over that King Arthur, but I think going into the second game, I kind of got to give it to Kennesaw just because if it goes as late as it did last game, I think their team fight's just going to be way better. They're going to be able to split up this fight really well, but I need, specifically for Ithaca, I'm going to need to see this Osiris get them to the late game, and then this Yamoja kind of dictate some of these fights.
Colonel, what are your thoughts?
Sorry?
On the team comps, who do you think is going to win off of the team comps here?
This one's hard to say. I do like both team comps about equally. I'm not a huge fan of King Arthur, but I think he can do work because not a lot of people know that the attack speed buffs how often he can get his big ult off.
Hmm.
So him with Fafnir is a little hidden, little synergistic pick. So maybe Kennesaw again, but Ithaca's are looking really nice here.
Well, we don't have to wait too much longer. We can send it on over to Argent and to Kira to show us game number 2, Kennesaw State versus Ithaca.
Thank you kindly, folks on the desk. Akira, are we back at the start of Season 8 with all these picks, except for, of course, Morgan Le Fay? We have 2 warriors in the solo lane, and we have Nemesis in the jungle. None of these picks have been really recent in my mind.
I was about to ask you, what year is it? And then I was going to say that actually, secretly, King Arthur does have synergy with Fafnir, but Colonel beat me to it. What are you going to do? But yeah, very interesting to see these come out, especially the Arthur and the Guan Yu. Very interested to see what will happen in the solo lane.
Yeah, we did see, of course, the Cerberus and the RDO be banned, but there's still some other Guardians that aren't really seen there, like Kabrakan,
Sobek.
Xing Chen, Sobek, all those Guardians have been played, but I think both these Solar's are looking to get a bit more aggressive than some of those picks, except for the Kabrakan really seem to offer. The desk members were saying that they really liked how Kennesaw's comp looked. How are you feeling about these comps going into the game number 2?
It kind of comes down to Yamoja's ult. If Yamoja's ult gets that value, splits up the team fight, which it can, because Arthur can't get through it, and Cupid can't get through it, and Nemesis can't get through it, then I think Ithaca has a really good chance here. Now, if they can't make that work,
Oh,
if they can't-
minions!
Oh boy.
Oh no, and Might
Oh,
We
no,
Trust
no, no,
falling
no.
real early to the minions. He tries to get a little bit of poke onto the King Arthur, but he finds himself getting poked and prodded by all the archers instead. That heal not online quite yet, just with the dash and the glaive. Not gonna be able to sustain through that damage, and I mean, that just archers, man. What are you gonna do?
Dog, for me, that's a yikes. Very unfortunate for the Guan Yu going down like that, losing the blue, losing first blood bounty that early in this. I think King Arthur, despite the fact that, you know, his Guan Yu's Tallow Assault does stop King Arthur from knocking him up, I do think that King Arthur is going to have a little bit of strength and dominance over here in the solo lane for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, especially with that first blood going his way, gives him a little bit of boost in XP and gold over his lane opponent. This mid matchup is going to be pretty interesting as well, as long as, especially with the jungle matchup, as you see, Izzy getting the best of Abstracted Mona at the moment. He's just trying to get back to his tower, but with those dashes, he is not going to get away. That is a solo kill in the 1v1 for the jungle matchup. That was something I was going to talk about, whereas Nemesis not played too often because it's the amount of CC. Currently in the meta is Martini barely surviving a heart bomb there, but up specifically against the Osiris, I feel like she has a bit of a better chance into him, don't you?
If it's just Nemesis running into Osiris in the jungle, then yes, definitely. Now there are other forms of CC that can deal with this Nemesis a little bit more effectively, so we'll have to see if Izzy's able to translate this dominance in the jungle into the team fights. But definitely, especially early, Osiris doesn't have a way of getting rid of the shield. Osiris' slows don't slow down the dash. Nemesis has a very strong pick there in the early game.
Definitely
I mean, he has a tether, but like
yeah, but that takes like 4 seconds to get the stun off.
Might as well be an hour and a half at level 2.
Yeah,
or 3,
you're going to be
right?
dead by the time that goes off, especially into a Nemesis. And this, like I was saying before, this mid lane matchup, the Soul into the Morgan Le Fay. Soul's been a very strong pick for a while. Hasn't been like top of the meta, but definitely brings pressure and hard to kill with survivability. As we see Osiris actually looking for a bit of a gank over here on duo side. Misses the Spirit Flail. Doesn't look like the enemy duo lane has noticed him yet. The Cupid Dash does get off, but the Fafnir not going to be able to get out of range of the stun. Unless the rest of the Ithaca's dual lane manage to step up, though, it does look like nothing's going to happen there. In the meantime, King Arthur takes Guan Yu airborne, as Guan Yu's not hit 5 quite yet, but does reach the safety of his tower in time.
Yeah, and as we said, the King Arthur is bullying that Guan Yu, translating the pressure gained off of that first blood very nicely. Soul is a safe pick, generally speaking. The Disapparate is among the better escapes in the game. It can get you through walls. It makes you totally invincible. But on top of that, picking Soul with Evan, the Fafnir, excuse me, that's a big synergy. So the two of them together magnify Soul's potential. And late game, Soul can burn you down just like an ADC, except with magical damage.
Yeah, their objective shred's going to be kind of scary once it gets to that point. And we saw the I keep want to say Fenrir when it's Fafnir. The Fafnir offers a lot of that objective shred there with the Cupid and the Rom. Speaking of the Cupid and the Rom trading now, Rom does get his ult up and does get the snipes onto Sped Royalty. Martini turning it a bit around from last game, goes from the person getting solo to the person soloing the other ADC player. Hopefully, he does seem to be having a safer pathing than Sped Royalty had last game after getting the 1v1. So we do see Notace gets the red invade off, but is now in trouble as he's getting chased by 4 members of Ithaca. The Disapparate does get out in time, immunes herself from the Osiris ultimate, but not going to be able to get out there as the rest of the team just mobs her and cuts off any chance of escaping.
Good call from Ithaca chasing in there. Oh,
we see Fafnir decided to try to contest that. Gold Scorpion does not get it, forces out the ultimate of himself, but he does get out. The rest of Ithaca not really want to play around with a lot of reinforcements he might have hiding around the corner there, but that just is a little bit of overextension, as I was just, commending Sped Royalty, or not Sped Royalty, my apologies, Martini on Ithaca for playing a little bit more defensively with his pathing. We see Notace play a little bit too aggressive with his and gets punished for it.
Yeah, I think Notace also had a little bit of that last game going on with the Raijin jumps in. One thing we didn't talk about last game was even though Ithaca lost even though they did kind of go down pretty heavily before they did lose, Martini was holding it down in that ADC versus ADC comparison. So already getting out to a 1-0-1 compared to his 0-1-0, counterpart on the other team. Rama's ult traditionally,
We see Guan in trouble again. Does manage to get in his cavalry charge and retreats under the T1 tower, but this King Arthur has put on the pressure since the start of the game and has not let it off. Though he didn't, get his hands dirty and get the first blood with his own 2 hands and the sword, but he has been putting on the pressure on Guan Yu and trying to get his blade a little bit more dirty than the start.
Well, to quote System of a Down from back in the medieval age, why don't kings fight the war, right? That's just how the kings fight the war. They send little peons up to take down their opponents. And yeah, the Guan Yu is not having a great time of it this game.
Yeah, I mean, well, what would Guan Yu really fit into? He would just be a normal cavalry knight in the medieval times, or do you think he would be more of a...
He was a war leader, right? In Chinese mythology / history.
Yeah, he's a bit of a general himself, so I would assume he would be at least on the front lines.
I'm not the Guan is not doing himself any favors. I gotta say, the thing I just noticed is that is that Ansile coming out first? The King Arthur is a physical character.
I would imagine it's probably going to be a Caduceus shield to really bump up his healing a little bit, but still a very odd choice. Most soul laners go into a direct physical or magical protection depending on who they're up against. As we see Izzy try to get a little bit aggressive and steal the speed buff, is not successful, and that forces the blink out of both himself and Abstracted Mona. The chase is now on. She gets to the King Arthur for safety, decides to turn around on the Osiris. Osiris gets airborne, the Divine Judgment on him. He falls with the King Arthur slamming down Excalibur. Cavalry charge going through, getting the stun onto King Arthur, but I don't think there's anything left in this fight for them to really take. Kennesaw State lures the enemy jungle and soul laner into a trap. It ends up turning around what seems to be an overextension by Izzy into a kill for them.
Yeah, Izzy. It's funny, I keep saying Izzy and I'm thinking, well, there's no Izanami here. But yeah, Nemesis playing that very well, using the dash. Oh, wow.
Huge amount of damage coming out of the soul. Double kill coming out of the soul. Stellar burst, barely catching the coattails of Yamoja's dress, dragging her down into the depths. Both her and the Morgan Le Fay will fall, though. That's that stellar burst damage, and alongside it with her ultimate, it just does insane amounts of damage. It's really sleeper, as if you get the second or third hit, it doesn't do as much damage in a roll, but that initial hit is just so nasty.
And now I think Kennesaw State, we're seeing a much faster lead being established this time. Already up about a little over 3,000, right? Yeah, 3,500 at 8 or almost 9 minutes into the game. With both Gorp and Forp down, I wouldn't be surprised if Kennesaw State starts looking at one of these objectives relatively soon.
Yes, with the Gorp, sorry, not the Gorp, but the Gold Fury actually fully spawning in here. There's going to be a brief break in the action. While we have this pause coming out, let's take a look at some of the builds. Osiris going with the Icavol, not really too rare, as we see also Sped Royalty, who decided to go into the T1 Devo's Gauntlet last game, ended up not completing and selling it. Now it goes for the more traditional Icavol going into Odibo route, but as we had Narwhal be highlight for us there, the Sovereignty on the King Arthur. How are you feeling about that pickup as a first item?
Now that's very interesting to me because the value of Sovereignty is the aura, right? And King Arthur's going to be diving away from his carries. I don't know about that particularly. Caduceus Shield, I mean, I guess, but going that first as Guan Yu, I feel like it's a much better pickup to take a second or third, especially since that lack of physical defense out of the T1 and T2 of the item, as far as I know, basically led to Guan Yu giving up a lot of pressure and getting bullied in Soul Lane.
Speaking of getting bullied, Martini ends up being forced into the air as a gank from Izzy comes through, but Abstracted Mona is there trying to play a bit of a Guardian form, trying to body block as he can, slows down the Nemesis. Fortunately, Fields of Love come down and confirms the count of the Ram, and now there's a re-engage by Ithaca as now the mid and support have rotated in. Looks like Izzy is going to escape, forces out the Morgan Le Fay ultimate. In the backside there, though, we see Sped Royalty in trouble, trying to fight a 1v3, potentially 1v4. Does end up getting a trade. Trades out the Osiris for his own life, and now Ithaca, who were the aggressors, are now getting aggressed on with a huge rotation in from the Soul. Nemesis comes back, gets the blink off, reduces that protection, forces out the Emoji right before she dies. But that is an insane turnaround by Kennesaw State. They're very similar to what we saw on the right side of the map. gets the disadvantage, and immediately turns around for an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's the risk of taking these fights so long and drawn out, and with a little bit more mechanical precision out of these plays, you know, Ithaca might be able to get more value out of them, but unfortunately just a few missed abilities here and there are killing these fights for them. And now Kennesaw State has opened up a 4,500 gold lead. Now, the other thing to remember here, very important, under normal circumstances, if you lose your carry in that situation, that means there's no threat on Gold Fury. In this case, instead of a traditional mid laner, big circles, they have Soul. Which means that had they so chose, they could have gone directly, taken their Fafnir and their Nemesis and just gone straight to Gold Fury there. The threat on Gold Fury is much, and other objectives is much harder to shut down for Ithaca with these team comps.
Yeah, it was definitely a play for Kennesaw State there, but deciding to instead go back, try to get their buffs, reset, get some power surges up online with the Erendite being completed for the Nemesis, Ratatouille being completed for the Soul. Overall, some patience being shown there, not forcing anything. But speaking of forcing things, Kennesaw now with those power spikes online, immediately burn down the Pyromancer. Fafnir not needed. We do not need his buff in here. The Soul passive is enough. Confirms the Pyromancer for them as we see Ithaca trying to.
Oh, this is not a good idea.
He takes it too long, ends up getting killed by the said Fury. Now the initiation is on by Kennesaw State. King Arthur blinks in, takes someone up to the sky. Now Divine Judgment is down on the Morgan Le Fay. Does not get her ultimate off in time to save her life. Rom also not being able to get the ultimate off and save his life. Now Yamoja is just desperately trying to find a way out. Uses her Sonic Ring, but it's not enough, and she'll also fall. And that's probably going to be a Gold Fury for Kennesaw State.
I mean, like, unfortunate. I mean, I have to imagine that's a lack of coordination there out of Ithaca. Letting the Osiris jungle tank that for so long is just not going to work, especially with that build. That's Ichabod. Ichabod does not provide any protections, and I understand the idea of we need to get on Gold Fury right now, but if you're not going on Gold Fury together, you're not going to get it. And unfortunately, in addition to giving up the Gold Fury, now they give the deicide on top of it.
Yeah, it just seemed to be a bit of miscommunication. Speaking of miscommunications, we see you said you were 9 all the way up between the T1 and T2. He pushed in the minion wave, probably asking his teammates to get the T1 while they were up there, but Nemesis reset. Cupid went to his purple buff. Fafnir also on the reset. Looks like Cupid is going to be able to push up in time to get the T1 tower, but King Arthur taking a lot more damage than he was bargaining for. Rom still has his ultimate up since he died before he could get off last time. However, the second shot and first shot both miss. Third shot not doing enough, and he will fall. Getting a little bit too comfortable trying to get a pick there. And speaking of picks being had, Yamoja steps a little bit too close to the flame and gets burned by Soul.
I mean, at this point, Ithaca is down about 8,000 gold. This is a big problem for them. You need to stop being alone. You cannot be alone. Both those kills just there were 2v1s.
We see potentially another kill coming out with Cavalry Charge being forced out of the Guan Yu. I don't even see, yeah, Nemesis didn't even use her ultimate there to burst down the Guan. She's just doing that much damage this early as we see her actually going into one of the shurikens, one of the crit items here. So it looks as though Cupid's going to be going to the Kinsai's and Nemesis going for the crit, keep that build split up. But if you're Ithaca going into this as far down as you are right now, what is your play to try to get back into this game?
Divine Intervention. I mean, this is such a terrible, terrible position to be playing from. I'm not
see actually Divine Intervention happening underneath the T2 here as Yamoja still manages to stay alive, gets the full ult out, but not enough to stay completely safe. Ends up falling. It's going to be a T1 in mid for Kennesaw State. Going to go ahead and take that, potentially siege this T2. Yeah, this is seeming pretty heavy-handed by Kennesaw State here. They've taken their lead, and they've been pushing it very hard here. It looks as though the detransformation will come through with the Fafnir, and they will back up, potentially looking for a fire play. But as you were saying beforehand, aside from Divine Intervention, is there any players Ithaca can really lean on or try to play around in these fights, or is there any weakness that Kennesaw has been showing that they might be able to take advantage of?
Well, you do have the only steal potential on the map, effectively, right? Those Rama snipes can steal objectives, so that will turn things around. You will need to, don't get me wrong, for Ithaca to get back in this, they're going to need to make a couple of big plays, right? It's not just going to be one team fight and then, it's back to even. This is 1 or 2 or 3. but it is possible. The Rama snipes are important. I would say the most important thing, again, and I've said this at the beginning, is Umoja getting value out of the separation there. It has to be angled correctly, and it has to be angled to split up the fight. It cannot be that you're just funneling them in, because they don't care. They're up 10,000 gold. Funnel us in, yeah, great. We all want to be on top of you anyway. So that would be, I think, the big thing here.
Yeah, definitely agree. Maybe trying to use those Rivers Rebukes sideways instead of down the lane there. Try to just keep them out from pushing all the way through. As we actually see just gold amount coming in and through the builds there, as Fafnir ended up going the Phantom Veil, even denying Umoja even that small solace of anything in these team fights. You might be able to block us up for a second, but if her Phantom's up, it doesn't matter if you're ulting or not. Fafnir also decided to go with the Divine Ruin as his third item there, getting some more power online. It's hard to see, to look at a support getting a power item online while the Umoja just now at 16.5 minutes completes her Thieves.
So interesting to see, by the way, against a Guan Yu and Umoja, Kennesaw opting for just that one Divine Ruin as their sole anti-heal, and it's not mattering. I'm not criticizing. And as you said, I mean, good coordination out of the Nemesis and Cupid, splitting up those builds, meaning that one build path from the frontliners on the other side won't be able to counter them both. And yeah, here we go. Fire Giant, definitely the right call, especially with the huge zoning going on over by Speed Buff.
Bracer is dropped, giving them the extra protections as we see King Arthur and Nemesis, a terrifying duo so far in this game, has been walking down the entirety of Ithaca, bar Ram, who's split pushing on the left side. They end up killing one Osiris. Now they've been split up with the T2 between the two of them. King Arthur's starting to get a little bit low as he dives the Phoenix, but he's trying to get the Morgan Le Fay in return for his own life. Neither will end up falling. Guan deciding against continuing the chase. That Fire Giant buff might have came in just in time to keep that regeneration up on the King Arthur, because he was playing very aggressive underneath the mid Phoenix there with no help around him.
I mean, what are you going to do in that situation? If the King Arthur can dive your Phoenix with the T2 still up and not die, I mean, what hope do you have?
Yeah, it definitely seems to be as you said last game, a 99%er.
Yeah.
Maybe leaning more towards like a 99.8.9 there. It's essentially all but done, unless, you know, either this Ram or this Morgan Le Fay ends up finding huge abilities in this next fight. Ram does have his Silver Branch bow online now, starting to build into the crit. But at this point, seems like it's going to be really hard to find anything with the background with how effective this King Arthur Nemesis have been on the dive.
Yeah, definitely. We're moving into those Star Trek Voyager warp factors of 9.997 or 5 or whatever it was cruising at to get back from the Delta Quadrant.
This might be their chance. This might be that percentage going down as they try to solo the Primal Fury. Not solo the Primal Fury, but Soul was there with Cupid still trying to do that. Starts getting a little bit too aggressive on the chase, ends up getting dropped though, and now it's turning horribly wrong in the favor of, not in the favor of Ithaca, as it looks like the Umoja is also a drop fall from the Heart Bomb, the Divine Judgment being used, chase down the Guan Yu. Guan Yu using Cavalry Charge to get out. At some point in there, Ram died, and we didn't even see that happen because it was so quickly. Now Morgan Le Fay's trapped between the entirety of Kennesaw State. That's a deicide for Kennesaw State there. If I'm them, I think I would just be pushing down this tower, pushing down this Phoenix, potentially ending the game.
I think probably this is basically more or less the play that ends the game. As you said, that was a chance. The carries were out of position, but the lack of coordination there. Osiris goes in, 1v2 against the carries. Osiris isn't King Arthur. To jungle Osiris is not the solo King Arthur in this game. He's not able to 1v2 the way the Arthur's been doing. There you go, there's the Riptide you need to see most of the game. But unfortunately, without any follow-up, not getting enough value out of it. But yeah, so without that coordination, that means that the Osiris dies for nothing. And then off the back of it, Kennesaw State just re-engages and takes out the rest of the team.
Yeah, and you see the Phantom end up being popped there just to chase down the Umoja, making sure she died. Nemesis does something that I like to do at times when I'm feeling confident, back directly in front of the Phoenix line and beg for them to try to stop me from backing. And Ithaca will respectfully let them leave, but not letting the Fafnir leave, and that might end up biting them here as King Arthur's back on the gas pedal, brings up the Morgan Le Fay, forces the beats out. Morgan Le Fay getting really low just from the King Arthur, and she gets soloed by the King Arthur in the middle of her team. Now Soul's pushing it, ends up killing the Guan Yu using the Solar Burst. Or sorry, Supernova, and this seems to be a Titan push here. They don't have the Nemesis or the Cupid, but as you stated earlier, they don't need them. The Soul is here. The Soul is hitting so hard. Level 20 before 20. They are burning down the Titan. Ithaca without any River's Rebuke to separate the fight here, trying to keep them off the Titan. It looks as though Kennesaw State's looking for kills over the Titan damage. The Titan's still very healthy. Now that Cupid and Nemesis are here, that's soon going to be falling. It's already back down to half. Rom does end up picking up the King Arthur after King Arthur dives the fountain, but that's not going to be enough to save the game. Kennesaw State take a very strong 2 over Ithaca.
One of the worst feelings in the world is turning a Phoenix defense into a loss, but an even worse feeling is turning hanging out in the jungle or chasing someone into a loss, which is effectively what happened there. They overextend a little bit chasing the King Arthur. They lose the fight and they get wiped and lose off the back of it. Unfortunate. Not a complete walkover. I mean, worse than the game one, but there's definitely potential from this Ithaca team, but they do need to work on their mechanics, work on their coordination, and next time I'm sure we'll see them put up a much better fight.
Definitely agree. If Ithaca just works on those few things, I'm sure it'll be much more of a contender. We did see them still contend some things. They had moments of greatness, especially in that early game one. They came out and they were willing to play ball. But Kennesaw State looking like a very strong powerhouse team. They're definitely going to be a team to look at, a team to follow as the season continues through. But that's not for us to break down. We're going to be throwing it back to the desk to summarize this game number 2 and close out the day.
Thank you, Argent and Akira. This is Nevea03 on the desk here with Batu and Creamy Colonel as our guest. What a set! What did you guys think about game number 2 and the set as a whole this evening?
It was a bloodbath, and I loved it. Every single second of it. This is the type of smite I like. Maybe a little cleaner, but bloodbaths are the only way to play game. Batu, you're muted.
Nothing wrong with there. I totally wasn't muted. Definitely a little bit one-sided there by Kennesaw, but able to play it clean enough to get the 2-0 and play well. The biggest thing for me, especially in game 2 takeaways, Morgan Le Fay, I can see why she wasn't picked or banned in the first game. Maybe need to see a little bit different mage there. I think that goes a little bit other just because they didn't have any team fight in that second game. You got Osiris, single target. You got the Guan Yu, who can be pretty single target. And outside of that, they really didn't have a whole lot of AoE outside of the emoji alt. So, but with that all being said, Ithaca, I think they played individually pretty well. Just as a team, I think if they get some synergy, they can go a lot farther. And if this rematch were to happen, I think they'd be able to put this to a 3-game set or even 2-0 in their own favor.
Indeed, hopefully.
Kennesaw definitely had that synergy, especially with the Fafnir and the Soul, and all of that was already highlighted. But yeah, that was a really quick set on the side of Kennesaw State. Congratulations to them on winning this set. Colonel, did you have any shout outs or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, just watch Clemson. Watch out for us. We're coming back this year. We're coming out swinging. We're up 2-0 in both our sets, so keep an eye out for us. I won't plug myself because I'm not streaming recently because of school. But yeah, Clemson University, go Tigs.
We'll definitely have to be on the lookout for that. Maybe next week we'll be casting one of your sets. We'll see.
Oh, one can only hope. You guys didn't cast the 16-minute one, so. Oh wow.
Well, thank you both for joining me here on the desk this evening. Batu, always a pleasure, and Colonel, it was very nice to meet you. And
Nice meeting both of you.
big shout out again to Argent and Akira for being on the cast, and Narwhal, thank you so much for being on production. We will see you all next time. Thank you for joining us.